All right, we got a really good question here that says, can you expand on how we can know the difference between divine or true self desires and egoic ones? An example, there was something I wanted to do because I was nurturing the body, but then it was very expensive. A friend of mine happened to be going to the area where the perfect place to do it was, so I researched it and went for it, but I have guilt and I had fear. I do believe it was everything I thought it would be. Was it egoic or true self/divine? Only you know that, but what I can tell you is what it's not. You mentioned the word guilt. Now, guilt and your true self-desire would never go hand in hand. You would never feel guilty or have regrets about doing what your true self desires. That is one of the many ways you can tell which is which. When you're doing your authentic calling, it feels right. Right? The reason why we feel guilt sometimes is that we do things that feel wrong. These things go beyond emotions. Okay, these are not emotions. Right and wrong on the spiritual level has nothing to do with emotions. You could feel very good, but feel like you're doing something wrong. You could also feel very bad, but feel like you're doing something right. You see, right and wrong are different metrics. It's a different dimension of measurement, you could say. So it's about doing what feels right. That's how you know that you're doing something authentic to yourself. Another way you can tell that you're doing something that is authentic to yourself is that you don't necessarily have a plan for how it's going to work out, because all that thinking, all that strategy, all that planning, all the visions, all the ideas, all the thinking, that's in the realm of the ego, in the false self. That is not authentic to who you are. Your authentic self is being expressed in the present moment, without you knowing what comes next, without you knowing how your creation is going to unfold. So when you're in the unknown, you're probably more likely to be in your authentic self. But you see, it's hard for me to tell you exactly whether or not you're authentic. It's something that you have to figure out for yourself by becoming authentic, right? If someone else could tell you whether or not you're being authentic, you're probably not being authentic, right? Because you don't want someone else telling you how to live, right? That's not authentic. Authenticity comes from you being grounded in yourself, of you knowing exactly who you are, what you're meant to do, what you're meant to be, everything about you. You know more than anyone else these things. Once you step into your authentic self, you will know all these things. So, but becoming present and doing what feels right, those two things are pretty much universal for anyone who is trying to lead a more authentic life. But very good question, and it's definitely something that I think a lot of people are trying to navigate in, because we have certain desires, and let's talk about desires, because desires is what prevents us from stepping into our authentic self. Now, you might have desires for certain drugs. We talk about caffeine a lot, and the right way to quit caffeine is actually not by having a desire for caffeine and then repressing it, pretending like it's not there and just trying to plow through all the withdrawals and all that. No, the right way is actually to indulge. Every time someone asks me, like, how do you quit? I say indulge fully, but add awareness to the process. So if you want to drink caffeine, if you want to consume some coffee, do it, but then add awareness to it. And do it until your desire is totally exhausted, right? Experience every single aspect of the consumption of that desire. Feel what it does to your body. Feel what it does to your energetic system. Feel what it does to your emotions. Feel what it does in the time span of a week. What happens when the half-life is reached? What happens when you are completely depleted from caffeine? What happens when your body has restored to homeostasis? What happens when you then reintroduce caffeine? What happens when you overdo the caffeine? What happens when your desire says, let's have 2 cups, and you're like, no, fuck it. Let's have 20 cups. Let's have as much caffeine as we need until we have exhausted our quota, right? Imagine that every soul on earth is incarnated with a quota of, let's say, you need to consume 10 kilograms of drugs. You need to have sex 1,000,000 times. You have all these quotas, you have all these numbers, and only until you have depleted that balance are you going to be able to honestly step into your authentic self. Up until then, you're ultimately just suppressing and repressing your desires. You're not transcending them. You're not rising above them. They're still there. You're just pretending like they're not. So you need to speed run your desires, essentially, rather than living in moderation, rather than having this push-pull relationship with all these desires such as drugs. No, just indulge fully and then add awareness. Adding awareness to these processes is a multiplier. So if, let's say, on the quota scale, you have maybe 1 cup of coffee, it equals 1 cup of coffee. Now, that is only if you do it unconsciously. The moment you add consciousness and awareness to the process and you really have this cup of coffee and you really enjoy every single sip of it, you feel how the body is reacting to it. You feel how the coffee is going down your body, how it's, energizing your cells, it's depleting your adenosine, receptors, all those things that we hear. You feel all these things. You add awareness to all these processes. Now that cup of coffee counts for 100, right? You skip the line, essentially. You're speed running your own desires. And this way, you will be able to then honestly let go of them, okay? That is so much more powerful and it's so much easier, right? You're not going to have to force anything when you do it that way. You will genuinely lose the desire. And that is true freedom. Then you can step into your authentic self. Then you can ask, what do I want to do? Beyond all the desires, beyond all the cravings, beyond all the pleasures, what's left once all that is depleted, once all of that is scraped off? Who am I then? And what is still bringing joy and value and purpose to me at that point? That is where you want to be. Don't repress. If you have desires, if you feel like it's hard, you're most likely still repressing all your desires. So indulge fully and do it guilt-free. Realize that it's your quota. It's the balance you've been dealt in this incarnation. And you have to deplete your balance. Only then will you be able to say, okay, now I've done it. I've honestly done it. I've done every single variation of the coffee. I've tried overdoing it. I've tried underdoing it. I've tried quitting it for a while. I've tried, I tried the one where it's some animal that poops it out, the beans, and then you roast them and it gives a different flavor. I've tried all of it. Now what's left? Well, what's left? That's a question for you. What's left? What's left once you have depleted your desires? But first you have to deplete them. First you have to exhaust the balance. And thanks for watching.